Today I'm going to show you how to make knitting machine scrunchies. A few days ago I posted a photo on my Instagram of a scrunchie I knit for my daughter, and I've been getting messages right and left since then asking for a tutorial. This is a super quick and easy project. I can make a scrunchie in probably 20 minutes from beginning to end, and it's a great way to use up leftover yarn. And I'll be honest, I used to think scrunchies were just decorative, but since I've been making them, I've realized they're actually really functional too. I've noticed that when I use these to put my daughter's hair in a ponytail, it actually holds her ponytail in way longer than when I use a regular elastic. And I also think they're protective in terms of hair damage as well. Before we get to the tutorial, I wanted to share my latest projects with you. My knitting machine coloring book, which features 50 coloring pages for kids to design their own hats, scarves, and headbands, and my knitting machine sketchbooks, which feature templates for knitting machine hats for knitters to sketch, design, and plan for their own hat design. You can pick up the books in the Amazon links in the description below, and the digital downloads are available on Etsy. Or you can visit DianaLevineKnits.com to see all my books, digital templates, and patterns. The supplies I'm using today are loops and threads Impeccable yarn, a 48 needle Sentro knitting machine, a darning needle, and a hair elastic. All the supplies I'm using today are linked in the description below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for lots more fun, quick and easy knitting patterns and tutorials. I'm going to show you how to make 3 different size scrunchies using 2 different seaming methods so you can see the differences in sizes and seams, and you can choose which you prefer for your own projects. The large scrunchies measure approximately 5.5 by 5.5 inches, the medium scrunchies measure about 4.5 by 4.5 inches, and the small scrunchies measure about 3.5 by 3.5 inches. And if you're wondering if you can wash them, we accidentally put my daughter's scrunchie in the wash today on the regular cycle, and it looks pretty much the same after washing. I did take it out before we moved the laundry to the dryer, so I can't speak to how they look in the dryer, but ours did okay in the wash. To begin, I'm going to cast onto my knitting machine using a scrap yarn. I suggest using a color that contrasts well with the main color because it'll make it easier to seam the scrunchie at the end. To cast on, wrap your yarn around the first needle and then weave it back and forth around the needles until the end of the row. When you see your first needle again, bring your yarn into the tensioner and choose the middle tension. Knit 5 rows in the scrap yarn. Next, we'll switch to our main color. You can cut a short tail in the scrap yarn, but leave a very long tail in the main color because we'll need to use that tail to seam up the edge later. Knit 20 rows in the main color. Hold the 2 tails together close and low and slowly begin cranking the machine, making sure that all the first few stitches are caught. Knit the first few rows slowly and then you can pick up the speed after the first few rows. Okay, I just finished knitting 20 rows. Now I'm going to switch back to my scrap yarn for 5 rows. Next, to cast off, simply cut a short tail in the scrap yarn and crank the machine a few rounds until the work falls off the needles. If the last few stitches get caught, just remove them manually. Pull your work out of the machine and gently stretch out the stitches. You'll end up with a short tube. Turn the work inside out so the bumpy stitches are on the outside and the V-shaped stitches are on the inside. Grab a hair elastic and make sure it's got a good stretch to it. Scrunch your work together, no pun intended, and pull the elastic onto the work like this. Next, I generally look for whichever tail is longer and I use that tail to seam the sides of the scrunchie. I'm going to show you how to seam this scrunchie with your darning needle, and on the next size I'll show you how to seam it with a crochet hook. Line up the top loops of your main color so you're matching a bottom loop with a top loop, and simply bring your darning needle through the bottom loop to under the top loop and repeat the same process over and over until the end of the edge. Make sure not to pull too tightly while you're seaming. When you get to the end, make sure you're catching the last couple of live stitches. Then trim the tails down to 5 or 6 inches and tie one quick temporary knot between the 2 tails. You don't want to tie the permanent knot now because we want to be able to adjust the tightness of the knot later, so just tie one quick knot to keep the tails secure. Next, remove the scrap yarn. Generally, there'll be one side which pulls off easily and one side that's more of a challenge. For the side that's more of a challenge, identify the yarn that's looped through the top loop and use a crochet hook or a darning needle to pull it through. Once you get that yarn pulled through the entire loop, the rest of the loops will pull out much more easily. Once you remove all your scrap yarn, double check to make sure you didn't miss any stitches. If you're all good and there's no live stitches left, pull the knot between the 2 yarn tails tight and play with the tension to see what feels best to you. When you like the tension, secure the knot with a couple of tighter knots, and then use a darning needle to pull the tails into the middle of the work and trim the excess to weave in the ends. Next, I always like to use a knitting tag on my work, so I'm going to add a knitting tag to my scrunchie, and I'll link in the description below to the shop where I order my tags. If you do use a knitting tag, I suggest covering the knot where you knotted the tails together. Next, I'll show you the medium size with a crochet seam. I'm going to follow the exact same procedure as the large size I knit earlier, except I'll knit 15 rows in the main color. I just cast off my 15 row scrunchie, and now I'll show you how to crochet the side closed. Like earlier, line the loops up directly above and below each other. Put your crochet hook under the bottom loop directly to the left of the yarn tail, then pull the top loop through. Next, pull the next loop on the bottom through, and then the loop on the top. Continue in this process, alternating between the top and bottom loops until you finish the row. Then, follow the same process as before to secure your tails with knots, remove your scrap yarn, weave in your ends, and add your tag. For reference, I'm also going to knit a small size scrunchie, which will be 10 rows in the main color, following all the same process as the first two. Our scrunchies are complete. Here's the large size, which was 20 rows, the medium size, which was 15 rows, and the small size, which was 10 rows. Here you can see the differences between the sewn seam and the crocheted seam. If you have any questions about this project, please comment below or find me on Instagram at Diana Levine Knits. And if you'd like to purchase my knitting machine coloring book, my knitting machine sketchbook, or any of my digital templates or patterns, please visit dianalevineknits.com. And if you found this video helpful, please give it a like, comment below, and subscribe to the channel for lots more fun, quick and easy knitting patterns and tutorials.